What's going on, y'all? This is Marquez back again with Harmony Reptiles, and today we're going to be talking about Boa Constrictor husbandry, or their housing. Before we jump into this video though, let me introduce y'all to my beautiful baby girl Genesis here. She is a Peruvian true red-tailed boa. Looking forward to raising her up throughout the course of her life. She's already pretty, as you can see, but if you know anything about Peruvian red-tailed boas, you know that each time they shed, they get darker and darker. They're not light like this. They transition into this really pretty yellow, almost golden color that you just can't beat when it comes to red-tailed boas. But yeah, in this video, I'm going to be talking about boa constrictor basic necessities. They're really hardy snakes. So as long as you have their basic needs, then they'll thrive. You don't need to do anything too fancy, although you should deck their house out as much as you should, because they deserve it. But if you can't afford the best of the best, or you don't have the space for the best of the best, they'll still thrive. One thing I love about boa constrictors. So let's jump into it. I'm gonna name some things that you need, and then I'll show them to you. So first off, you need their house, their enclosure, and with that being said, stay away from, if you can, try to stay away from glass enclosures. Mostly because they are not good at holding humidity. Boa constrictors, they come from hot places, tropical places, so they need warm, hot, wet, humid atmospheres. And glass just doesn't do the trick. So you need plastic or PVC. For the most part, glass enclosures, you're not going to be able to access your snake from the front. Typically they have the lids on top, like the mesh material. And if you have any type of, not to be rude, but if you have any type of common sense, you know that heat rises, and with the mesh material at the top, that's an easy way for all the heat and the humidity to be able to escape. And some people will try to compensate for that by putting something like a heat lamp on top. But generally speaking, boas, they don't thrive well with heat lamps. There's a lot of things that I could list off that could potentially go wrong. One of the easiest things to point out would be the fact that they could get burned from the top. I've seen some crazy cases of that happening to some boas. Typically you want a heating pad so they can lay on top of it, or something like heat tape. So yeah, get you some plastic or PVC. What else do you need? You need their hides. Typically you need a hide for the warm side of their enclosure, and you need another hide for the cooler side of their enclosure. You need a water bowl so they can drink out of, and it also acts as a way for humidity to stay inside of their enclosure. You need probably a thermostat. You don't need one, but it's good to be able to have an idea of the temperature inside of their enclosure. Give them something that they can rub up against so they can help with the shed. Put a couple rocks in there, maybe some branches, and something in there if you can afford it. Put some type of shrubbery in there, make it look pretty. And I feel like it just helps the overall mood of your snake. And most importantly, you need a substrate that's going to hold the humidity as well. I typically try to stay away from the sand-based substrates. Get you something that's chunky, like coconut husk, the bark, things like that. And again, I'm going to show you all of these things. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything. I believe that's it. So yeah, you need an enclosure, PVC or plastic. You need a hide, somewhere for them to be able to hide. on their hot side and their cool side so they can regulate their body temperature. You need a bowl so they can drink out of or soak in, and it also helps with humidity. You need stuff like rocks or branches so they can help with their shed, and you need a good substrate. All right, guys, so here you have it. Here we have just your basic plastic tub that you can get from your local Walmart, Target, Home Depot, whatever the case. I've seen plenty of established boa breeders use simple things like this, and I promise you that your boa will be okay. Now, with that being said, I do feel like, you know, your PVC enclosures are better for a few reasons. One just being the natural aesthetic of them, they just look better. But I feel like, I don't know, a part of me just feels like because it looks better, it might just function better for your boas. I don't know. But with that being said, your regular tub from Target or wherever, Walmart, Home Depot, whatever, it will work just fine until you're actually able to provide your boa with something big, fancy, and nice. Those things are not cheap by any means. But yeah, like I mentioned in the first half of the video, you need a hide. Typically, you need a hot hide and a cold hide. You see all this water in here. That's because I have a heating pad up under here, which I'll show you guys what that looks like in a minute. And yeah, for the most part, your snake will be spending the majority of its time in here because, like I mentioned, boas come from climates where it's hot, it's tropical, it's very humid and moist. So get you a hide and put the heating pad up under one side, and yeah, the hide will do the trick. It'll keep the humidity under there. That was a perfect example. You can also see like the condensation dripping off the side. That's how humid. That's essentially one way to be able to look and know that you know you have the temperature right. Typically your thermostat, if you have one in there, it should be reading around this. I need a new one. I was washing out the enclosure one day and it got water trapped inside of it, so the humidity is always stuck at past 100, but the temperature works on it. Your temperature should be around 85 to 95 degrees. Your snake will be okay. Boas, they're hardy, like I mentioned. I mentioned that you want to have two hides, right? You want one for your hot side and you want one for your cool side. You can have, I like this one just because one, it looks better than this one. But you can get two of the same plastic enclosures like this if you want to. I got it because it looks better and also because the texture of it, it just, I feel like it's appealing to your snake to be able to rub up against it to help it shed and just give it something else to like stimulate itself. Got a branch in here. You got your water bowl for, like I mentioned, for drinking, for soaking, and it also helps with the humidity of your enclosure. Substrate. This is substrate. This is the type of substrate that I like to use. You want something, got a piece of shed in here. She just shed out. I guess I missed that piece. But you want this type of material. I feel like it holds the humidity a whole lot better, and it's just less of a mess compared to stuff like this, right? These blocks of like sandy material, they're pretty good at like holding humidity and stuff as well, but not as good as the cocoa husk or the bark. And it's like a sandy, muddy material once it gets wet, and it's just a mess. Every time you take your boa out of the enclosure, it's gonna be stuck all over them, and when you're trying to clean the enclosure out, it's just not fun. Yeah, one thing that you should do too, I feel like this is common sense, but drill little holes going all the way around your plastic enclosure. If you have a nice PVC enclosure, it's gonna come with ventilation already built into it. But if you're on a budget, you know, get you one of these and just drill holes from the inside, the inside out. Because if you drill from the outside in, it's going to leave plastic, like sharp plastic, coming through the enclosure, and that could potentially, like, I don't know, like scratch your boa up, damage his nose, etc. Let's see. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah. So if you're having trouble, right, with the humidity, get yourself a spray bottle as well. If you notice the bark or the substrate is getting too dry, get you one of these, and just every day or every couple of days or so, spray you some water in there, and you will be able to have you a thermostat, right, to be able to check and make sure that the humidity and the temperature inside of your boa's enclosure is where it needs to be. So yeah, y'all, as long as you have this general setup, of course, you want to have the nicest setup as possible because they deserve it. But this is a simple and easy way and to make sure that your boa has everything that it needs. And I promise you that your boa will thrive with these basic necessities. So here's what the heating pads look like. You can grab one of these at your local reptile shop, PetSmart, Petco, whatever. Now they vary in size. The bigger your boa, the bigger you want your, heating pad to be. But yeah, man, they do what they're supposed to do. It's not rocket science. You just take it out the plastic and you stick it up under the bottom of your enclosure, wherever you have your hot hide at, and you know, the temperature will be what it needs to be. I haven't had any problems with it being too hot or too cold. Yeah, they're just pretty self-explanatory. They have a sticky side on the bottom, and that's where you would stick the heating pad at and let it do its job. Now, the bigger your collection of snakes, I don't have that big of a collection, so I have no need for it, but it'll be pretty hard to have a bunch of heating pads, right? So what more established boa breeders do is they use things like your thermostats with your heating tape. Now, I don't have that many snakes, so I can't show you that example, but you know, if you guys stick around for the ride and this channel continues to grow, then you know, I'll have heating tape and thermostats to be able to give you guys an example of what that looks like, but I don't have it, so stick with me, and hopefully I'll be able to show you guys that. So there you have it. As long as you have those things inside of your boa's enclosure, they should thrive, no problem. Something else that I want to touch on though is the size of your enclosure, right? So for example, if you have a boa constrictor that's 8 foot long, typically you want to have you an enclosure that's 8 foot long. Reason being, you want your boa to be able to stretch its whole body out, right? You want it to be as comfortable as possible. Now, if your boa is 8 foot long, you can get away with having something that's like 6 foot long, 6 by 2 by 3 by 4, you know, whatever you can provide to make sure that your boa is as comfortable as possible. On that topic, right, something that I've heard before a few times, and I'll be honest with you, I really don't believe it to be true. It just doesn't make sense to me. But I've heard that the smaller your boa is, the smaller you want the enclosure to be, because a big enclosure will give your snake anxiety. Now, it doesn't make sense to me because I believe that as long as you provide your boa with a hide, then it doesn't matter if your enclosure is as big as your house. As long as they have a little hide that they can go and crawl and snuggle into, then they should be okay, right? That just makes sense to me. But you know, like I mentioned before, I'm no snake expert. I haven't had a bunch of baby boas to be able to prove this theory. Hopefully in the future, I do. I do have aspirations to breed one of these days. So, you know, maybe I will be able to test that theory out. Trying to think if I left any other important information out of this video, but no, I don't think so. I think I checked all boxes, man. Hopefully y'all like this video. If it was helpful to you, leave me a like, leave me a comment. If you really enjoyed this content, subscribe to the video I would greatly appreciate it. If there's anything that y'all would like to hear me talk about, leave that in the comments as well, and I'll try my best to get around to making a video about it. But yeah, y'all, guess I'll show her off one more time before we get out of here. Wish I had a nice camera. I'm doing this off my phone, man. One of these days, I will have a nice camera for you guys to really be able to zoom in and just really show y'all the beauty of these snakes, because the quality on my phone is really not doing this snake any justice. But yeah, y'all, until next time, man, love your boas, take care of your boas, and yeah, peace.